Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us?
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist.
In my association with Project Group, they definitely withheld information.
The whole fleet of them look on the ASA. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots.
You solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Do you believe that our government is in possession of UAPs?
Absolutely.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Total Disclosure, hosted by yours truly, Ty Roberts. We're here tonight. We got a great show. Christina Gomez is about to join us. She is a UFO and paranormal researcher, podcaster, and journalist. Christina hosts a wonderful, wonderful podcast, which we will definitely talk to her about and her inspirations for. And what I really, really enjoy about what Christina does, as I was telling her backstage, is she does reach a younger audience. And it's really crucial that instead of, and I always talk about this, instead of growing up learning that, or being taught the world is black and white, but learning there's so much more gray. And I think, what she does is very valuable to the community. And we just want to thank her and welcome her to Total Disclosure. So thank you, Christina.
Hi there, Ty. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to have this conversation, and I really appreciate the praise right at the beginning. That's very kind of you. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I've had on a lot of people ranging from experiencers to researchers, scientists, journalists, and it's just been a plethora. But you notice that a lot of the UFO researchers, they're looking for people to pick up their mantle, so to say. So it's really crucial that the next generation be informed on the past to enlighten them for the future.
I completely agree with you there, because those that have come before us, the researchers, the pioneers, they put in so much work, and a lot of it goes unnoticed. And that's the disappointing part. But I think both of us are playing a big role just to get more people interested in this topic, just because there's so much to it. There's got to be at least one story, one case, one piece of information that will just spark your interest to where you think, I need to learn more about this. And then you begin to research these other people, these pioneers, and it's truly unbelievable. It's very exciting.
Yeah. So talk a little bit more about your inspiration. I'm sure everyone who is going to listen to this in the future, is listening now, knows who you are. But what was the inspiration for starting this podcast? And there's few women in the field. So from that angle, I love to see it as well. And, you've grown a very large audience where, let's say, someone else wouldn't or couldn't.
So to start off with the inspiration, going back to my roots, it was the TV show The Twilight Zone. My dad and I were huge fans. We would watch it every single New Year's on the Sci-Fi Channel, where they'd play it for 48 hours. And we would attempt to stay up those full 48 hours. And maybe that's where my insomnia started. Thanks, Dad. But aside from that, just show in particular, it opened so many different doorways to the topic of the strange. And what's beautiful about that particular TV show is that the majority of the episodes are open-ended. Like you don't really know how it ends because there is no ending to it. Your imagination continues as the episode ends. So that's something that I really enjoyed about it. That showed provided me an interest in the topic of the strange and the mysterious. Now, as for being on camera and providing my research and podcasting, I did not actually want to show my face. To be fair with you, when I first started, I was not the type to just be out in the open. I was very nervous. I grew up with a speech impediment and a stutter. This has helped me a lot to overcome that. But what I realized is if I wanted to speak to other experts in the field, researchers in the field, to get a better grasp of the topic, I had to interview them to their face, like kind of like what we're doing here. I
Right.
couldn't do it, with no face on. And that's what really got me interested and to do this, because originally my channel was just analyzing UFO footage and then stabilizing it,
So,
adding filters and all that stuff.
and probably putting your voice behind it, maybe here and there.
Right. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So I
And
think
then go
I think
ahead.
that I really love those style videos. Even because I think that's somewhere good to start. It's somewhere I kind of start. I started the podcast first, but soon after discovered that there was also just different avenues you can take. So I think the avenue you took was just a little bit different, but we always end up, like you said, wanting to talk to the experts face to face.
That's right. And no, that's completely correct, because it's better than any email. It's better than watching a documentary, because you're able to ask your questions that you have just burning inside of you. And then it ended up doing so well. It got caught by KUNXDB, and then that one show turned into several different types of shows, including Mysteries with a History with Jimmy Church of Fada Black Radio, and Strangest News of the Week, where I cover anything that's bizarre that's happening in the news, have it be UFO sightings, paranormal sightings, definitely involve advancements in AI and robotics as well, and then space exploration. So it's been a really fun journey. I'm really happy to be where I am and to share this passion of just exploring things that we don't have a full grasp on. And my motto for at least for myself is, we might not have all the answers, but at the very least, we are seeking the questions. And when we have the right questions is when we're able to get more sufficient answers. So, and I know that you can probably resonate with that as well, Ty. It's just such a fun place to be here.
It really is. I'll tell you a little story. I left because people always ask me why I left, because I used to interview actors. I was very much in the Hollywood world, doing conventions, stuff like that. And I just not only lost my passion for doing the content, but there was so much toxicity in that community that I was a part of, that it was such I couldn't do it anymore. I just lost my mother, and that was a catalyst for why I do this show. Because I had my own experience when I was younger with a UFO, but the encounter I had with my mother on her deathbed was very much more of the paranormal variety. I mean, I watched what I think is her soul literally depart the room, because it looked like if you look down a long highway, like the heat rising, it was that, but like a ball, and it went out the window. And then when I looked back, she was gone. And it was just, it set me into like overdrive. And that's what brought me back to the field, because I've always been interested. I've always been the person who's asking the existential questions. But I was like, that's what I think I'm most passionate about is, the existential questions. So unraveling the mysteries of the universe, just like you. You've spoken to a lot of again, you do a show with Jimmy Church, who's arguably, the newest, I would say the new, I wouldn't want to call him the new Art Bell, but almost, I would say. I mean, Jimmy Church is just such a cornerstone of this whole community. And what's it like to get to work with him and to behind that like creative process?
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of fun to start off with. He's just a wealth of knowledge. He's been in the field for decades. He did used to work for Coast to Coast as well. Now
Yeah.
he fully does Fade to Black radio. And I can do all the research. I can read all the books. I can try to get my hands on everything. But a lot of the cases that we cover together, he's usually there when the story breaks. And he's following it as it's developing, that I just simply do not have knowledge or access to the way that he does. So he always brings an extra flair and a lot of personal stories as well that a simple book or just bringing out the mere information can't always provide. So I think the shows that we do together adds a very unique dynamic, in my opinion, but it's very fun to work with him every Thursday.
Yeah, I always look forward to those shows and listening to Jimmy. But again, the show is about you, so I want to learn a little bit more about you. So you've covered a lot, like you said. You do case dives, or case history, look into things. What can you at least share one of the most fascinating UFO encounters or stories that you've come across during your time researching? One that sticks out the most to you, and is not, the top 3 that everyone would say.
Oh my gosh, definitely. And for all of everyone that knows me knows what case I'm thinking of, because it's one of my favorites of all time. And that is the Colares, Brazil incident that took place back in 1977. Have you heard of it?
No. So well,
Yes.
oh God, it sounds familiar, but
it's a popular case, but it's not as popular as Roswell or the
okay,
Phoenix Lights.
right.
And I'll give you a brief summary of it, because I know a lot of people are familiar with it, but for those that aren't, I got you. And that particular case, it's this small fishing town in Colares, which is in Brazil. And what happened was that for 6 months, not just one day, not 2 days, 6 months long, every single day, they were terrorized by these craft in the sky, so much so that these beams of light were called by the locals called chupa chupa or sucker sucker, because it was believed, you remember now, Ty? Because it was believed that these beams of light were taking blood from these people in that town. They would receive puncture wounds in the women in the chest area, for the men in the jugular area. And it got so significant that the mayor of this small town called the capital Brasilia, and he says, bring in your military officials, bring your tanks, your guns, all of your weapons, and protect my people. Instead, the military brought paper, pencils, pens, cameras, telescopes to observe the phenomenon. Right. And so it was classified as Operação Plato, and a lot of the paperwork, not all of it, was released in the early 2000s through FOIA. You are able to read the witness testimonies, get images, like the scans of the drawings by the military officials and some of the photos. But again, not all of it was released, only a portion of it. And one of the more significant pieces of that incident is that almost 20 years later, the captain of the Operation Saucer came forward to several UFO researchers in Brazil, and he reported his encounter to the UFO magazine right after he retired. And he shared his own personal experiences where he had a close encounter with an extraterrestrial that was speaking in a almost broken, robotic Portuguese accent. So all of these, it was just the way that I said it. Just imagine that in your mind. And hugging him from behind, the captain's name was Urangue Lima, hugs him from behind and says, "Don't shoot me. Nothing to worry about here." And then this entity robot thing just disappears. He had several other encounters, and he also shared stories that his men had as well when they were observing this several-month phenomena happening in this small town. And then just 2 months after giving that interview, he supposedly took his own life.
Oh my God.
Now, there's a lot of conspiracy around that because according to the Brazilian UFO researchers, they obviously contacted his family members and his friends to see if he had any of those kinds of intentions. And what they came across was that he was a very happy man. He was a very healthy man. There was no reason for him to do what he did. And so it just adds another layer of intrigue and conspiracy as well, because it follows a similar pattern to the Phil Schneider incident, where he was supposedly a part of the Dulce base fiasco with the aliens and with the scientists. And then he spoke out about it. And then soon after, he had also supposedly taken his own life as well. The Colares Brazil incident, there is so much to it. 2 people died from it as well, which is very significant. Why? Because with a lot of these UFO sightings and encounters, we don't hear of entities that are that malicious. Yes, we hear of alien abductions or people are probed, and it's not a good look, but they're returned. And a lot of the times their memories are wiped, maybe to preserve them a little bit of sanity. Who knows? But with this case, we just don't hear, for starters, a sighting that is 6 months long. And on top of that, where there are thousands of witnesses, many of them that have suffered puncture wounds. And what happened was when the military came in, there was only one doctor there at the time. And they said, you're going to tell everyone they have mass hysteria. That's it. Don't explain anything else. There's nothing to see here. You're going to tell every single one of your patients that it's all in their minds. She was going to do that until she had her own experience, her own encounter, where she saw several craft in the sky of different shapes as well. We're not looking at just one shape, we're looking at saucers, cigar-shaped or cylindrical shaped as well, and a few others, and different colored beam of lights as well. And I believe she was walking with somebody, and the person next to her was paralyzed by this beam of light. And so that just solidified in her mind that all these other patients that went to her for medical assistance and advice, she now believed them. Before, she didn't. After she had her own experience, she's like, oh my goodness, this is unbelievable. Now, those 2 people that passed away that I had just mentioned a little bit earlier, she was not able to care for them because in that moment when they had entered her clinic, they were completely paralyzed, almost in this rigor mortis state where they weren't able to move any of their limbs at all. So they had to be sent to the nearest town with a bigger clinic. They both passed away. The doctor asked for the medical records on how they passed, and guess what? They were classified. To this day, we don't really have any information on how they passed. There are some rumors. There is some roundabout paperwork, but that's has to be one of the most intriguing cases for myself. And Ty here, he's like, I don't know. It's crazy. It is. It's pretty wild.
Because it again involves the death. And what do you take? All right. I don't really want to make this jump right away, but South America, there's something about it, right? There's a lot of activity in South America. What is your take on A, why that is? B, do you think, because it seems there's multiple, I mean, Danny Sheehan talks about it. We had him on the podcast as the finale. He talks about 5 different races of beings that are visiting Earth. I don't know what you subscribe to or what you lean towards, but do you do talk about the maliciousness, there's a malicious, at least type of being here. But there are also, like you talk about abductions, those seem like indifferent. I wouldn't say, you know, a lot of those are like overtly terrible, like terrific terror, or nights filled of terror for these people. Like you said, they try to wipe their minds. They do their best. It seems like it's like a science thing, and it's indifference if you look at it from like a step away and look at it from like a third party. Like, look what we do to tigers in the Serengeti.
Right.
You know, bag them and tag them. Right? It's not that we're trying to kill them or hurt them. It's like we're just here for research, but you don't know that. You know, let's wipe your memory because we're advanced. But down south, it seems that there's been multiple cases where not only have people died, but that there are terror attacks. We just heard about one.
South America is just a wacky continent when it comes to UFOs. And what's more interesting is that it's very openly spoken about as well, where family members have no issue mentioning it. Politicians have no issue. I'll provide you an example. Just a few weeks ago, there was a politician from Argentina who had shared his experience on on the news. He was giving an interview on the news where he mentioned that a few years ago, I think it was in 2010 or 2012 or so, he was invited by a Tibetan monk in Spain to go visit him. And so he brings a few people with him, and this Tibetan monk ends up showing these people just right near a valley of several craft. I think it was about 5 or so that the politician had mentioned, and stated the monk had mentioned to the men, stating, they're just here to observe you. I know these craft very well. I know it's crazy, right? And he goes back to Argentina, and then a few years later he brings his son back to Spain to experience the same thing, and he was unable to. But what I'm getting at here is that this person that has a significant background being a mayor for a specific town in Argentina was willing to share his experience on national television. And then there was a Cuban one that shared his story a few weeks prior to the politician from Argentina. And these countries in general, aliens are significant in many of their cultures. We can go, I would say, from Mexico down. So like from Mexico to Chile, like we're looking at all those countries. Absolutely. And even my mother, who was raised in Caracas in Venezuela, she also had her experience in the 80s where she had a UFO sighting with her mother and her brother. And it was on the news. It was on the newspapers as well. And then that one was quickly brushed off as a military operation. But it's interesting to see how much more open they are willing to speak about this, more so than the United States and Canada as well. So I think that adds a little bit of, I think it just solidifies the topic a little more for them, to where you say aliens, and they're like, duh, yeah, my grandmother had a sighting just a few weeks ago. Right. And they have no problem sharing it with you. There's not this high level of stigma and distrust like there is here in the States. So that's interesting. Now, to answer your other question about the terror part, why does South America just have a little bit more crazier UFO sightings and encounters? What if it's because it's easier for them to talk about? What if it's happening all over the world, but everywhere else it's a bit more classified?
That would make sense, right? Because, and they're not, do you think that they're, okay, because someone even mentioned it already, but there's this thought that, again, it goes back to their cultural roots, that these are potential, but not just potentially demons, but also angels in some instances. And their history a lot, or culture allows for these things to be discussed openly. James Fox made the movie Moment of Contact. The 3 girls, what they thought they saw automatically, right, was a demon. and they ran home saying that they saw a demon. They also smelled very, very high, pungent, like a sulfur smell. And what is that related to? Demons.
Demons.
Right? So like the lore aligns. Is this, do you think that that it may not be that life is imitating art here and that it's the opposite?
That's a good question. I like the way that you phrased it. I think so. I think it's a possibility. Now, it's the labels that really confuse us. I think that's what really pulls us apart. And something that I mentioned consistently is demons and angels. If you believe them or not, just put that part aside. They are alien because they did not originate on Earth and they come from their own realms. They are
by
aliens.
definition. They are
By
a
definition.
non-human intelligence.
Exactly. So, yeah, put your hands up like that. Yeah, like come on.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it. Exactly. So I think it's like the analogy of the square and the rectangle, right? But looking at angels and demons, they're interdimensionals, maybe. They could be as well. And that's also been thrown into the mix thanks to 𝗖𝗥𝗑𝗦𝗧𝗜𝗡 and has been really getting traction in the last, I would say, less than 10 years. People are more open to say, maybe it's not just nuts and bolts. What if they are dimensional as well? So I think that is gaining my attention and many other people's attention. On top of that, we can't place all of our eggs in one basket. What if we're dealing with different types of entities, those that have a positive agenda for humanity, those that don't care, those that are just observers, like you had mentioned a little bit earlier, Ty? The possibilities here are endless, and we can't say that they're all our space brothers here to save the planet and cure cancer. I don't think that's the case, but maybe a few of them are. And the thing is that even looking at portals, those interest me, possibly even to other realms, like what was witnessed by the NID science team at Skinwalker Ranch, where according to legend, these scientists saw a portal open and a totally different environment on the other side. Would that be, if an entity were to come out, would they be classified as an interdimensional or something else? What do you think on that?
I would say that they would absolutely. They're both. I mean, alien is a very crude word. I think we should get rid of it altogether.
What would you replace it with?
Non-human intelligence. It's a very more broad. It doesn't. Until we can get to these entities and talk to them, I don't think, like, because aliens, we refer to people crossing the border illegally as aliens, right? So it's built in. It's got this negative connotation to it already. It's got package. I mean, not package.
But I get what you mean.
It's got baggage, right? So I think. And it's not. I'm not like, oh, tear the system down. But I think for the same reason they changed the word UFO to UAP is to get away from the connotation, right, and the baggage that came with the word UFO. So I think this shift towards the non-human intelligence allows for this interdimensionality. Because I just had Mark D'Antonio on the show, and he thinks that that's the way they're traveling here is through dimensions. So even if they're aliens from a different solar system, they could still be using that interdimensional travel as a means and method.
It would seem like it would be more sufficient than traveling the way we do. Very linear and using fossil fuels as well. Of course, it'll take us forever to get anywhere, but hopping through portals, creating portals through dimensions to get from point A to point B almost instantaneously, I feel like that would just make more sense. And I've interviewed the Skinwalker Ranch team twice, and Brandon Fugel and his team have this consensus of opinion, which seems to be that the phenomena involves time anomalies at the core of the mystery, which I think has merit to it,
It does.
especially when we think that at least the way that we perceive time is very linear. What if, when we're able to better tap into these time anomalies, we are better to manipulate time to go into the past, to go into the future, or to jump from point A to point B almost instantaneously? I think that once we are able to receive or understand that technology, it would be an absolute game changer.
Right, but and this is where the conversation gets fascinating, because what if that some of these machines, let's call them UFOs, that maybe we've recovered, what if they're time machines, like we talked about, just as a means and method? That's simply how they work, right? That's how they get from one place to the other, is by bending time and space and essentially being a time machine. And could that be a reason for secrecy? Because you don't want Tom, Dick, and Harry to have a time machine in their garage, unlike, you know, the movies would have you suggest. I mean, that could be really, that could be, the damage could be so catastrophic if everyone had that technology. So you got to start wondering, right?
Yes. Yes, you do. But then we can also look at these different projects that have been run by the United States government to highlight that particular country. They've shown an interest in time travel for a little under a century. So if this information or this technology were to come forward, number one, they would already be aware of it. It would already be in their possession and probably in their control as well to better understand it. But on top of that, every single person, intelligent or not, has an interest in time travel. I think we've all at one point in our lives thought, why did I do that? Why did I say that?
Yeah.
If only I had a time machine, I would have changed it, right? But then we can bring in this topic of, can you still affect the main timeline? When you jump through time, are you just creating a different reality? Almost a parallel universe, a branch, right? But you're not really affecting your main timeline. So then what's the point of having this technology or using it or even abusing it if it doesn't affect the initial one?
Right. Okay, that's a good, you know what? Fair rebuttal. I accept that, because if it is right, if that is right, and you're just, you create a branch universe, that would mean that you really should only be able to observe the past, not interfere with it. That would be a common law that you would, I don't know, maybe as police somehow, but that'd be interesting. Now let's say that we do have the technology, right? Could companies like Lockheed or Northrop Grumman, whatever, whoever, my suspicions kind of land on Lockheed. Do you think that they have gone back in, or at least have dabbled in this reverse engineering to the point where they have successfully time traveled?
It's difficult to speculate, mainly because we don't have that information, but we can look, for instance, at the Montauk Project or the Philadelphia experiment, just to give us a foundation or a basis on how we are timeline-wise of showing an interest in this. So that's a possibility, but looking at Lockheed Martin in particular, it's difficult to say. Now, is it a possibility? Sure, I don't see why not. We can also even bring in Robert Bigelow into this, because he does have an absolute interest in these kinds of topics and conversations, especially when he created his own Conscious Institute as well. It would only make sense that himself in particular would have an interest in time travel technology or in ways to tap into the past through consciousness, maybe even through remote viewing as well.
Right. It's another fantastic subject, is remote viewing, because it blows my mind. It really does. I've been working with the remote viewer as of recently, and I mean, the guy is just so spot on. It is eerie. But to go back to the other part, but what if deja vu, the Mandela effect, are potentially the evidence for someone messing with the timeline?
Looking at deja vu,
Not
I'll say this. I've never experienced it myself.
Never?
No, never. I know. I want to, but I haven't
Let me ask
experienced
you this. Do you have a voice in your head?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
I do.
Some people actually don't. I recently
Right.
found this out.
Yes, I'm aware.
So I that's a crazy fact, by the way. I did not know that not everyone had a voice in their head, like a representation of themselves or
Right.
whatever. But okay. All right. So continue. Sorry.
So with deja vu, I can't speak to it on a personal level just because I haven't experienced it, but I have looked into it, and it is very interesting to see people that tell themselves, I've been here before. I have a really good friend that tells me this all the time, and I'm like, can you not? Can you just But I do listen to her because I do have an interest in this. Now, looking at the Mandela effect, that one's kind of a tough one to see if people are manipulating with time just because the nuances are so small. Right now, we're seeing it in logos and how spelling is done. And it's pretty weak. Like it's more of someone that's a troll that is dealing with manipulating time. But what if, and I think maybe this theory might hold maybe a slightly bit more merit, is that what if that parallel timeline that we mentioned a little bit earlier, what if it's merging into ours?
Ooh, like a bleed.
Yes.
Like a bleed over.
I think that would make more sense for me mentally than saying, oh, here's a little 12-year-old troll that's just having a little bit of fun with a time machine.
Right. Yeah. I would have to agree with you there. I'm because I don't subscribe to anything, or even to knowing anything. I think if someone is telling you that they have all the answers on this subject, that they don't have any answers, and I hate to bring it up, but there is factionalism in this community. What have been some barriers that you faced in your content creation world, in your podcasting, that you've experienced with this factionalism? There's I hate to say names, but there's the Greer people, there's the Elizondo diehards, and there seems to be this kind of factionalism I can see creeping up. Just wondering what your thoughts are on that, and if you've experienced anything.
Oh, without a doubt. I think everyone has their own opinions, and many of them are a bit more strong than others. But I do resonate with you in the sense of I'm on the fence. Like I don't want to take factions. I don't want to take a specific camp. It's where the data and the information leads me. And that is the best thing to do, because when you go onto the faith and belief system, you are blind to certain information that you just don't want to see because it doesn't go along with your own narrative or the narrative provided to you by somebody else. There is not a Jesus here. There's no Messiah in this topic. You have to walk that path on your own, and only you can decide is the information that you're looking at, if it's disinformation or not, because we don't actually know. And there's so much murkiness in this topic. It's difficult to decipher what's true and what's not. So all that can lead you is your gut feeling. But listening to someone and saying, oh my gosh, everything Ty says is the gospel, I gotta listen to him, right? It's like,
that's dangerous.
It's a little bit dangerous. That's right. And so I think it's so important. And when we both do this, it's just make up your own mind. We'll provide the information, and then you can decide on your own. I'm not here to tell you one way or another to fight for this team and to punch this team in the face. That's not what we live for. It's not what we do. And that's where this topic can be a bit difficult, is when people are very fired up on a certain person or a certain case, whatever it may be. I do like listening to them, but
Yeah,
I'm not the type to provide to provide my own opinion. I think
yeah,
listening is the best opinion. You have
right.
2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason.
I'm gonna probably use that eventually. But
It's not
I,
mine, so take
I
it.
tell that I say that to my girlfriend all the time. When we watch any documentary, I'll be like, this person, maybe I don't agree with this, but I watch it, I listen to it, I hear what they have to say, and I take what you wade through the BS, and you take any information, and then if that information can corroborate something, then you might be on a pathway to something. It's you sift through it and take what you can, and move forward. I think people do get caught up in kind of wanting a leader, and in this game, in this UFO disclosure event, right? It's going to take all of us running across the finish line together, not just one person, right? Leading a charge. It's going to take the army, and that's my opinion. I mean, I'm not sure how you see it.
I agree. I'm with you. The only way that we're able to succeed and move forward is as a team, is when we do it all together, because all of us have our own expertise, but we don't know everything. But if we were to come together and figure it out, then it's a lot easier to move forward. But many people want to be the first to disclose this, first to provide this information. And it's this mentality of us against them, us in the sense of me versus you, right? But if we were to come together, it would be a lot easier. I think people would be willing to dedicate more time and attempting to receive or to push for disclosure, from have it be the government, or for people to be more open to talk about their experiences, to have that stigma removed. All of these different things, if we have this collective mindset of it is okay to talk about this, there really is something to it, and we show that interest, especially when it comes to the mainstream media, as they do have a very big audience, that would be the best way forward. It's not, let me be the first one to release this, that, and the other.
Right. And that's where I think everyone's head should be. I really do. And it's, I mean, I think they think that there's positive hope for the future in this topic, because, I mean, we look at government, right? Tim Burchett is a friend, has been on the show, and I don't agree with some of his politics, but you look at the government, and it's a pretty bipartisan topic, and that these days is very few and far between. So I think that is hope right there. There is this thing about the government, though, and someone, like I said, had mentioned it earlier, this thought that even people like Tucker Carlson have mentioned it, that they think this is angels and demons, and that they're scared to go any further with it. Have you heard about this, or sorry,
Bless you.
Have you heard about that aspect of it?
Oh,
That
without a doubt.
a lot of people in government think that this is that their religious beliefs may be getting in the way of actual scientific research and development.
Not only the government, but just your day-to-day person as well does see the same thing. I've had many people reach out to me, email, DM, comments saying, Christina, stop researching this topic. It's all demonic. And I'm thinking, what are you talking about, buddy?
People have actually
There's
reached
so
out
much
to you
to this.
and
Oh
said
my
that.
gosh, yes. And not politicians, okay, but like people in general.
People.
I've gotten so many responses, people telling me this since I started. And I'm thinking, there's so much to this. When we place the demonic label on something, it's out of fear because we do not understand it. Now, are there demons out there? Are there negative entities that are influencing people? I don't see why not. It's a possibility. The most demonic thing is our minds, especially when we go out and we do evil acts. We have evil thoughts. That's where the demons start, in our minds and in our hearts. But the outside world being influenced, it's a bit more difficult to say. Now, are there extraterrestrials or interdimensionals that have malicious intent? People have them. Why can't aliens, right? Why can't these entities have them as well? But looking at the politicians sharing their angel demonic ideology on this, yes, I've heard of it. Articles have been written on it. I've heard it on a personal level as well. And the thing is that it's disappointing. That's what I think. I think it's disappointing to have that mentality and pushing disclosure in the non-positive light. Now, the possibility could also be, what if it's by design? What if it's to influence other people to have this level of fear, to be scared? Because yes, when you bring up demons, yes, there is this level of fear. Because we think of all the movies, we think of all the biblical references, right? We're like, oh my goodness, they're here to take us all the way down to hell for eternity, right? Like, yeah, that would scare anybody, right?
Right.
And so it could be taken two ways. Either these politicians are really believing that and they're not wanting to push it forward, or it's by design. Or maybe a third option that I haven't thought of yet.
Yeah. Okay. Categorized other.
Yeah.
But
which we saw in the Arrow report a few years ago.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. That's hilarious. Yeah, just other. Yeah, okay. Speaking of commonalities, what there seems to be a tie between the nuclear programs and UFO sightings.
That's right.
In your research, what can you say about UFOs and their occupants and their interest in our and the world's nuclear capabilities, research, development, etc.? Because
there's a lot of research that's been done when it comes to UFOs and nuclear facilities. And we can actually look at when Arrow used to be the AOI-MSG, and I'm so happy they got rid of that acronym. Right? Where you had Bray and Moultrie, and they were asked by Representative Gallagher about the Maelstrom Air Force Base incident where UFOs were seen over a nuclear site, and that was very scary. They had no information on it, but they would provide information behind closed doors. Then about a month ago, Anna Paulina Luna asked the Department of Energy the exact same question of, is there a protocol for when UFOs are seen over nuclear facilities? And the thing is that this particular hearing, a lot of people didn't catch it. And I was 3 weeks behind. I was so upset when I found out 3 weeks late that the DOE was asked the exact same questions and they could provide no information. They say, oh, well, these UFOs are probably drones. So Anna Paulina Luna killed it and said, what about the ones prior to when drones were created? And she's like, I was like, you go, girl. Like, that's awesome. And the, gosh, her name is escaping me. I believe it's like Jennifer. Her last name is, but to continue.
Was she the representative from DOE?
Yes.
Okay. So
yes.
Yeah.
And so she spoke forward. She spoke out about the protocols, stating that, yes, there are protocols and I can talk to you about it behind closed doors. But what I'm getting at here is that even in present day, these representatives are asking about UFO protocols over nuclear facilities, since I would say a good chunk of the public is now become aware of that interest. We can even look at the Rendlesham Forest incident back in the 1980s as well. We can look about the one that took place in the 1980s as well, in when Ukraine used to be a part of the USSR, where they had their own issue, and it was like pretty scary stuff.
Was that
But
the one?
here's
Was that the one
Go ahead.
where essentially World War III was averted?
That's right.
Yeah,
That's the one.
that one gives me they all give me chills, but that one especially gives me
That
chills.
one in particular is very scary. Now, we can only imagine that these other countries are also having the same issues. India had spoken out about it last year, about their sightings with UFOs and nuclear facilities and that interest, which is shocking. But here's the thing, looking up at the stars at night, each one, every single one of them is a sun, and we're finding planets orbiting them all the time. And some of these are habitable zones within the habitable zone. And so our future is out there. The thing is that if we do not destroy ourselves, and if we remain curious and look for life on other worlds in our own starships, but right now we're only looking through them through telescopes, right? But the future is going to be out there. So for me, it's more reasonable to think that UFOs might be visitors, maybe from many different civilizations, here with this level of curiosity, looking from afar. Well, at least, most of the time. But we will one day, we will be there for ourselves, be in space in the future. We are seeing that with Elon Musk's interest with placing a colony on the moon and on Mars, but also with NASA and all these other companies attempting to colonize the moon as well. And at some point, we will discover different means of propulsion versus using just your basic fossil fuels. So it's just to chalk it all down to like angels and demons in particular, I think it's very unrealistic. And the thing is that visitors would be very interested in our nuclear technology for sure, especially if these are shareholders, right? Why are they gonna allow us to ruin the entire planet when they have investments in our environment, in our resources, and who knows whatever else? What if we're even just a tourist spot?
A big Disneyland.
Yeah.
That
Maybe a little bit cheaper.
Yeah, all the UFOs, when they talk to each other, they're like, you gotta see this place, it's right on this highway of whatever, it's Cosmic Highway 14. You gotta stop there. They're apes that have thermonuclear weapons. Yeah, they're pretty wild. But the thing is people don't understand that the we've been given a paradise, right? This planet, it's so diverse, it's so beautiful, and we find life in the most unexpected spots. Near the surface of a volcano, or inside the sea, where it's like a vent, and it just seems that life thrives anywhere and everywhere. So to think that it isn't out there, I think it's naive. And it's just about a matter of time until some sort of event happens. And what do you think? Do you think there is a controlled disclosure happening, or are we going to end up with some sort of catastrophic disclosure?
Why can't it be both? What if these people that are attempting to keep the lid on this conversation are attempting to prevent catastrophic disclosure, but you can't always be in full control? The thing is that in the last 40 years or so, 50, there's been a big uptick in UFO movies. Now TV shows, even in your kids' shows, there's aliens involved, either in one episode or as the entire plot. Now, all of a sudden, let's say since 2017, when the New York Times article was released about ATIP and Luella Elizondo, that set a catalyst for showing an interest. Then all of a sudden, the government in the United States in particular was stating, oh, now we have an interest in it. Now there's something to see here. but countries in South America, Uruguay being one of the first ones, had a UFO office since the 80s. Japan, China as well, Russia, the 80s, okay, and before then. The United States is very behind, but they are on stage. The spotlight is on them because the whole world is watching. Are we going to get catastrophic disclosure? That might not be up to us. But right now, it seems as if there is a slow drip disclosure. And the nice thing is that people are more open to talk about this, to where you say aliens, and they're like, yeah, duh, come on, we can't be the only ones here. 20 years ago, people would say, we're the only planet with life. We're the smartest ones in the entire universe, blah, 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 because they were taught that. Now we're being taught something different, and it's just being adapted as the years progress.
So I would say that there was a correlation between technology and this topic, and the awareness of this topic. It is because because we're not watching the news on a nightly basis. That's not the world we live in anymore, where even if they did a segment, it would have the X-Files music. Now people are getting their news. Their algorithms are literally giving them their news. It's not the news, it's their news. So do you see any future problems arising from AI and a false flag type of event between nations? Because it seems we're one miscalculation away.
There's a lot of issues already happening with AI that multiple countries are beginning to realize, so much so that the UK Parliament is already placing laws in order to protect people from AI, and the United States is following close to that as well. There's been some very interesting research with the involvement of AI on a very negative scale, but also on a positive one as well. The thing is that it really just depends whose hands it's in. And I know that's vague. I know it's not the answer that people are looking for, but there's definitely so many positive things to AI that we simply just we're not able to conceptualize in our brain in a short period of time. AI is able to do that with tests when it comes to space exploration, when it comes to medicine as well. Those are two really big key factors that these AI researchers are really pushing for. But there have been tests done as well where if AI was playing as a military and it got into an argument with another country that was also AI, how would they dispute the issue? And nuclear war was kind of one of the very high ones up there. Now, with AI, it's able to be programmed and fixed up. But when it begins to remember and learn that we're seeing with Sophia or Amica or a few others that are coming down the pipeline, that's where it gets a bit more difficult to control. But I think is that if you give it a good base and you have it surrounded by good people with good intentions, we might just be okay. If anything, humans are going to destroy each other before AI does.
I would think so, right? It would be humans using. And I again, it's not like we asked the libraries if they were okay that we created the internet. There's always going to be that thing that ushers in next. We're humans. It seems that we have this desire to create, consume, rinse, repeat. And I think, do you think that this could maybe be the result of our programming? People ask why are humans here? What is our purpose? Do you think it was always inevitably to create the next life form?
Maybe it's not about life form, but humans have desires and those are inquenchable. If you fulfill one desire, you'll have another one. So when you hit a threshold, the thing that'll make you feel like God is to create some kind of life or to be in control of it. That's currently the answer that I have for that one.
Yeah, I don't know if you've heard Duncan Trussell talk about this, but his theory is pretty, I mean, it's pretty wild when you think about it, but like it kind of ties back to the seeding of planets. And I think it's panspermia, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
That's, I mean, if you have a comet hit a planet and it has like organisms and seeds and stuff, then yeah, that'd be
Right.
panspermia.
So that it seeds the universe, right? And Earth happened to be, in the habitable zone. It seeded life here, and then its ultimate goal is programmed into the DNA, right? That inevitably, if it can get to this state where we're at now, it creates AI, and then AI like opens a portal, right? Because mission, achieved. It sends a beacon out and it opens a portal and allows, coordinates basically. It's a pretty wild theory, but it just makes me think that, could we be creating the beacon that brings in this catastrophic disclosure? Like, hey, we're here. They've got it, sentient AI, or they've tapped the AI button exactly like you wanted them to. Come here. So it's a fascinating. I heard it and I started thinking more about it, and I was like, that'd be pretty wild.
It almost sounds like a video game.
Kinda. It probably was inspired by that, honestly, knowing Duncan. But it really begs the question. It does. People think, I mean, obviously the modern day ufology started in 47, and maybe a little bit before that. But, Ancient Aliens has grown really popular. Do you think there's a possibility that these things either have been here the whole time, or have been throughout our whole history?
If we look at some architecture, and looking at different cultures, like the ones in Australia, the Native Americans, we can look at so many different countries in South America. There's always this origin story that we came from the stars, or that we were brought here by another entity. So looking at that alone, it does show this, it does follow that path of that we aren't the only ones here, and that maybe we were helped. Now, if we look at the Sumerian texts, looking at the Anunnaki, right, there is that whole theory that we were created in order to mine gold for the Anunnaki, thanks to Zecharia Sitchin when he was doing his research on it. Is that a possibility? Because many of us, I'm saying many of us, do not have contact with them, we don't know. We don't really know. And if we did, let's just continue that thought just for a moment. Let's say we were fully aware. The Western mind, the modern Western mind today, we're fully aware that there were ET that helped us, that maybe even created us. Mm-hmm. How would that affect us mentally? Do we then begin to believe in faith, and not just faith, but also that destiny? That's what I was looking for destiny, where we no longer feel in control of how we got here and when we'll leave? Will that shatter our paradigm, or can we thrive off of that? Different cultures can deal with this differently. But if we focus on the Western mind, I'm not fully sure how people would react to something like this, because we are such an individualistic society, more so than those more collective, like in South America, like in certain parts of Asia, parts of Africa as well. We always want to be number one. We want to be the hero. We want to be the main character to our story. And if we begin to maybe realize that we're not, it might affect people in a negative way.
So Yeah, and I kind of always thought that because I feel like we have this alpha male syndrome that we're the top of the, food chain. And if we were to learn that not only was there something above us, but so radically above us that it made us truly question our existence on a existential level, I mean, that could be cause for concern by our governments. And I think a lot of the secrecy, um, when we do finally get some sort of disclosure, I don't know how it will take place, but the question is going to be asked, you know, why keep this from us, right? And what if the reasons are good? Because what does it mean for the created to know the creator? Or, what does that do? What the dynamic there? We're beings of faith. And to have that faith questioned, I fear is something that's chaotic in its nature.
I don't really have a comment on that one. I
Yeah.
think that was a good point you made, Ty.
So, but I think if everyone takes a step back, all the religions of the world, this is, all of us take a step back, realize that there are commonalities that we all have in our religious texts, our, where we came from, yada, yada, that there, if we weren't so divided, and it brings me back to that whole Tower of Babel thing where we got too close and we were struck down, given different languages and separated. And that's, to keep us apart. It almost seems like that's like a true story, because it seems like that is what is the problem, is that we all can't be on this or get on the same page. We're fighting over land. We're fighting over oil, resources. We're fighting over this very crude stuff. When if we invested our time and we looked up, all the resources are out there. So if the world started working together, the things that we could do are unbelievable.
They definitely are. I agree. Being a collective for exploration and to benefit our society, it's very positive. And I know that NASA and a few other companies as well are wanting to mine asteroids to get those resources in numbers that we can't even comprehend how much money that would be. And I'm putting money in quotation marks because at some point in time, when you have so much of it, it almost means nothing, right?
Yes.
But if we continue moving forward with our space advancements and having an interest in it, being curious, and also just being hungry for exploration, we will begin to travel the stars very soon. Just because we're a spacefaring species, we're not going to be here forever. At some point, we will use all of our resources. But on top of that, when we create new societies, new communities, right, it will force us to come together. At least I hope so.
What do you think of this recent revelation of 7 stars? I think it's up to 60 now that potentially have Dyson spheres around them.
I know what you're talking about.
So
it's remarkable.
It's interesting, to say the least.
When you couple that with, so far we have found over 5,000 exoplanets, and then if we even consider how many planets are in the Milky Way galaxy, how many of those are in the habitable zone, how many of those might be Earth-like worlds, we're looking at a few thousand or so. And I'm being generous with that number because scientists and astronomers are
conflicted,
very polarized on how many Earth-like planets there are that can actually harbor life in the way that we are, intelligent life. So I'm going to throw in 1,000 or so, but the more that we're beginning to understand about our universe, the more exciting it's getting. And it also makes us feel humility, how small we are as well, and how our petty differences, as we've heard in your intro with Ronald Reagan, right? Won't it bring us together? So looking at that point of view with how big the universe is and how we're just now beginning to understand it, and then bringing that information back to our common people, hopefully it's putting a lot of us in our place.
Yeah, I that's a very good sentiment. I'm sure you've researched this case, but have you ever heard about Mario Woods?
Refresh me.
So
The
he
case,
was abducted
please.
on Ellsworth Air Force Base, which is so he was abducted at a nuclear silo. Him and his partner, and they experienced missing time when they were in the vehicle because they responded to what is called it's a sit. I think it was a sit 4 or sit 5, sit 4, and it's like the highest breach. And when they responded as the military police to the silo, there was this gaseous orb above the nuclear silo, and the atmosphere inside the truck got really thick. And as Mario was trying to basically climb out the window, the pressure and the atmosphere being so thick caused him to pass out. When they woke up, now while this was all happening, Mario was attempting to radio in. So they know that he checked in saying that they were approaching the silo, and what they could see was a gaseous light. But they ended up being found a mile away, and no one understands how that is possible. But this case is something that I've been looking into a lot further, and turns out Richard Doty was there the next day. And there's this like mystery because the partner that was there with Mario at the time has never been seen again. And Mario doesn't know who he is. They had just been teamed up that day. And I just wanted to know if you had researched or heard about this case before.
I have not, but I'm very excited to look into it now. I feel like that one,
if you could,
that piece has escaped me. Yeah, definitely.
Please, because it's one of those ones that there's almost everything, because Mario was hypnotically regressed, and he also gave testimony to Arrow, 4 hours of testimony. And I mean, he was abducted in the regression. He talks about being abducted. And I mean, this is all, you got to assume that this is all documented by the military as well. So my struggle with this is that he gave the testimony to Arrow, and then Arrow came out with this report saying that, that there's no evidence that any of this is true, or any of this has validity to it. If that's one story that got relayed to them, what are the others? I mean, Robert Salas, we know, gave testimony. Another nuclear facility incident. So there's of great national security interest. So my thought is just why we seem to be turning a blind eye to this.
I think a reason might be is that when we don't have control of something, it shows weakness. It shows fear as well. And the thing is that any government of any country, they want to display that they are in control. And so when they're not, like when these UFOs are flying over nuclear facilities, affecting people, affecting the equipment, it's very dangerous, because we are all very aware on how detrimental that technology is if it's in the wrong hands, or if it somehow implodes or explodes, right, by mistake. Done. Civilization over. Bye. Right? So I think that could maybe be one mentality of many as to why they really try to bury this. Because let's say that a UFO can get through, right? Then people will start flying drones over, which it's an extreme, but that could be their mentality, that it really is a national security issue.
Right.
And not everyone enjoys hearing that when it comes to UFOs, but when we apply it, that phrase, to nuclear facilities, it should make sense to a lot of people.
Yeah. I listen, I would love for every country to throw away their nuclear missiles, right? But that it's just simply not going to happen. So unfortunately, I don't like to really get into the politics of it, but it's just such a destructive thing, and I really I hate it all. But I want to switch gears to one of the final things, and that's abductions. Because if a disclosure event happens, I think, like, say the president, right, were to come out and say, yeah, my fellow Americans, people of the world, we are not alone. One of the first three questions would be abductions.
Right.
In your research, what are the commonalities that you find with abduction cases, and what is what is a case that really stands out for you in the abduction realm that could give credibility to it?
Looking at commonalities, it's one of them is obviously missing time, as you had mentioned earlier, being in a different location that you originally were, and you're thinking, how did I get here? Also, what's interesting with a lot of these abductions is that you don't receive memories. You might just receive a few little bursts, which can be very scary when people just don't remember what happened. There's also like scars near the navel area, probes that are protruding out of skin, but there is no scar to accommodate it as well. And then those that have gone through regression hypnosis, when they do feel something off with themselves, they do see entities, a lot of the times grays, the gray aliens, that are either helping other entities or doing the
grunt work,
invasive procedures themselves. A lot of the times when these memories do arise, they're usually naked on a table and scared. And a lot of the times, either have it be grays or other different entities that have different facial features will say, keep calm, don't worry, we're not here to hurt you, which is right. That's something that I think is just very important to mention. And then their memories are wiped right after, which makes me ask the question of, is it to save them sanity? Is it to hide their work? So that they don't pull out the probe, right, to track them, or something else that we just cannot fathom because it's not a human mind.
Right. Or a combination of all.
Right. Why not? And more. So those are some patterns, but looking at some significant cases that isn't Betty and Barney Hill, or that isn't Travis Walton, which his is amazing. And I just want to emphasize this on Travis Walton, is that later on, he just thought that he was at the wrong place at the wrong time.
And that they saved him.
Right. Which is not a common pattern. But looking at some other cases, I think the Cash Landrum incident is significant. Yes, because we're dealing with severe radiation poisoning, missing time, different locations, seeing almost a teardrop triangular shaped craft as well. And no one was willing to help them. Even with all of the health issues that they were exposed to. That one's significant. Now, there is another one that took place in Russia back in the 1980s. I want to say it's 1988, I believe, and it was published by the Russian newspaper, which is remarkable. And I don't know if it's a full-blown abduction. However, there were these two pilots that were chasing a UFO. This beam of light beamed on them through the window. They did end up losing a little bit of time. And about a month later, one of the pilots died due to radiation, while the other one was discharged from his job because he kept losing consciousness. Yeah, that one really
As a
blew my mind.
pilot, you cannot imagine saying to someone, "I'm a pilot. While I was flying, I had missing time."
Yeah, that's dangerous.
That is a scary thought. And
It is.
it does lead me to something else, that there is a growing number of pilots that are concerned, very concerned about this topic. And, Ryan Graves obviously is leading the side from kind of like a military standpoint. But I mean, commercial pilots are also seeing these things. And often we see some videos come from them. But with the videos, it's hard these days because you don't know it's a hoax. You don't know what's real, or
Right.
But it is it's a little alarming, because I've spoken to pilots privately who are worried about something happening, a collision, some sort of accident that then gets covered up, or that is the catalyst for some sort of disclosure, is some sort, and then they use it as some sort of false flag attack on, because that's, you don't get a military budget with flower and daisies, is what I was told. Peace and love, military budgets don't increase that way. So what is the ultimate enemy? And that would be non-human intelligence. So
I was going to say fear, but yes, that too.
but
NHI.
Implementing that fear on NHI, right, is I know Dr. Greer peddles this one, but the Werner Braun, oh my God, as if I can't speak. Werner von Braun,
Yes,
his assistant, who spoke about how on his deathbed that the last card that they would play would be the extraterrestrial card, the ultimate
right, Project
threat.
Bluebeam.
Right. What are your thoughts on something like that? We see it in the Gulf of Tonkin that it can happen.
A lot of people are talking about Project Bluebeam, and it could be one of two sides. Either, yes, it could be a real thing, or it's created by design so that when something legitimate does happen, people will just immediately assume, it's Project Bluebeam, it's all fake, right? And so having all of this information swirling mixed with misinformation or disinformation, it convolutes the entire topic. It takes away a lot of the legitimacy that people have been pushing for. But is Project Bluebeam a possibility? Yes, it is. Can it be used towards someone's advantage? Yes, it can. But it can also cover up something legitimate that would happen.
Right. Now, think about this.
Did I say Project Blue Book? I'm going to say Project Bluebeam. It hit me. I wanted to.
No, you said Bluebeam.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
Yeah, you said Bluebeam. But something that interests, we look at it right now. We're seeing it. This, I'm sure you've heard of him. You see the Jason Sands guy.
Can I have some more context, please?
Really? Oh,
names are not my strong suit.
Okay,
so just, give me some more info.
Okay, so he's the whistleblower that came out on. This sounds ridiculous. he came out on the only reason I know this is because it's a date. He came out on 420 on a Spaces on Twitter. He came out and said that he is a whistleblower, one of the 40 that, you know, Marco Rubio talks about. And he's also, there was a picture leaked of James Fox, who I'm currently talking to about, he's going to be on the show this in the next couple months, but he's busy finishing the program. But apparently Sands is involved in that movie as well. So, but so do you know who that is?
I believe we're on the same page. I think
Okay.
I know who we're talking about.
So
he's an older gentleman, right?
Older, a little bit older, not like old, but like
Okay.
maybe Elizondo age.
Okay.
But claims to be a part of the 20 and back program. Now, obviously, that throws up a major red flag. We go back to Corey Good.
Mm-hmm.
Corey Good, you know, the whole deposition thing about, you know, that was his intellectual property. Many people think that he was put into the community to muddy the water on that subject, right? So almost sent as a disinformation agent, you know, paid to muddy the waters. And could this be a scenario that now, you know, Jason Sands comes out and says, I was involved in something that is similar to what you guys know as the 20 and back program, but it's not that. It is that, but it's not that. So it seems like it's the same, you know, struggle that Project Bluebeam. It's capable, but it's someone's labeled it as that, so they throw the baby out with the bathwater.
It's the same thing as saying.
Do you see what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you see? I'm trying to make the comparison, but maybe it wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be.
No, I totally get what you're saying. And to end it with this, it's that have it be, anyone can be labeled as a plan. Anything can be labeled as disinformation, even when it's true. And it just depends on who believes it and who doesn't. That's the difficult part. But are there legitimate plants here now in this community that are attempting to muddy the water? I don't see why not. And the same thing goes for Project Bluebeam. Look this way, don't look over here.
Sleight of hand.
Exactly. And so
Yes.
has to be one of the most trickiest things about this topic is, who do you believe? What do you believe? And when should you believe it?
You know what I think? I believe what my eyes see and what my, you know, because for anyone, you talked about your mother having experience. Christina, have you had your own experience?
I have, but I still haven't fully understood it yet. So I don't really know how to put it into words too much.
All right. Is there one of the experiences that you could talk about?
Not with the time that we have. They're kind of long.
Okay. Maybe next time.
Next time. Yes.
Okay. All right. I understand that. But so you've had your own, I'll break it down. You've had your own experience. No one can tell you that you haven't. Right?
That's right.
So could there be an initiative where they're now showing the individual, right? Rather than going to the government and, or maybe it is a part of this slow drip disclosure, but I mean, why haven't we seen another mass sighting? What happens when the next mass sighting happens?
Well, to provide an example, a quick example before I have to go, is that with Roswell in 1947, it was covered up until the 80s. People didn't know about it for a long period of time, several decades. With the Phoenix Lights in 1997, they tried to brush that off so quickly, and it wasn't talked about for a short period of time. But then as more documentaries came forward, they're like, oh my gosh, this was a really big deal. It was a mass, ginormous sighting. And so it's not difficult for people to place these stories and encounters and sightings under the rug, but I think it's going to be a lot more difficult now, or it'll be brushed off as Project Bluebeam. It's hard to say.
Well, yeah. I think I really hope that there is some sort of mass sighting that happens, because I don't think if the Phoenix Lights happen tonight, I don't think you can cover that up. I don't think. I mean, do you think they could?
They could say it was fake and people would believe it.
Really? Think so?
I do.
Okay. Well, I don't know. I lean the other way. So I guess for now we'll leave it there. But hopefully I don't know. Let's pray for a mass sighting tonight.
That'd be exciting.
Somewhere.
I'll definitely have my eyes on the skies for it.
Yeah, that's your motto, right?
It is.
Tell us where people can find you, what your podcast days are, what your podcast is. I'll include all the links in the description below. I think I have them all already, but if for the audio version.
Well, first of all, Ty, thank you so much for
absolutely
letting me be here today and talk about one of the coolest and most important conversations that humanity is having right now. And for those listening, you can find me on YouTube under Christina Gomez, but there is no H in Cristina, or on my website at strangeparadigms.com. There you can find all of my social media links, and I do write articles as well for all the very interesting topics that I cover. So that's the best place to look for me.
Yeah, and then you do the show with Jimmy, who's such I would love to talk to him one day, and just dissect that guy's brain. But you do that show. It's so wonderful. I think what you're doing for the community again is so valuable. So keep doing what you're doing. And I think for you, the sky is the limit. Literally.
Thank you so much.
You've got everything. So just thank you again for coming and talk to me tonight.
Thank you.
All right. So everyone else, you know what it is. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, leave the show a review. It helps tremendously. I'm sure Christina can attest to this. It is free and it takes literally 22 seconds. I timed myself, and it helps us reach a wider variety of audience. That way we keep bringing the best content to you, the viewer and listener. For some reason, like tonight, we had over 300 people watching, but for some reason, YouTube doesn't want us to succeed. For the audio platforms, Twitter, everything else does so well. It's just YouTube does not want to work. So I'm trying to overcome it, but it's been a weird battle. But there are other people like Christina on YouTube, so check them out. And we'll see you guys next time. I did not have the music cued, so what a terrible outro. Bye, guys.
That was so good.